Seahawks Today is presented by Manscaped. You can save 20% off and also get free shipping when you use the promo code Seahawks at checkout. We'll tell you more about Manscaped coming up later on in the show. We're talking draft targets for your Seattle Seahawks today. I got the 10 players that I feel are the most likely to get drafted by the Seahawks with the 16th overall pick. Let me preface this before we go any further. I'm not saying these are the players I would take. These are who I think Seattle is looking at on their board for that 16th overall selection based on who's going to be available and what their team needs are. And I feel pretty confident that one of these 10 players will be the Seahawks pick when they draft at 16, should they stay at that spot. Before we do, a little question out there for the 12s. Let's go back in the hot tub time machine a little bit. Who is the worst Seahawks draft pick of all time? Who is the very worst? Who is the one that you just shake your head when their name gets mentioned again and you would love to just erase from your memory whatsoever?
LJ Collier.
LJ Collier, says Smitty. That's a great answer, actually. Who is the worst one? Let us know in the comments section. We'll get started with today's show. The Seahawks have 7 picks in this year's draft. It all begins at 16 overall, and then they don't have a second-round pick. They do have 2 third-round picks, though, 78 and 81. Then they pick again the 4th round at 118. They wrap up the draft at 150 in the 5th round, 193 in the 6th, and 232 in the 7th round. The Seahawks, although they're coming off a 9-8 season and have reason to be optimistic to build upon for their future heading into 2024, there's some obvious team needs with this group. Edge rusher, defensive line, offensive line, specifically the interior of the offensive line. Defensive back, need some help in the safety department. Wide receiver, you might have to replace Tyler Lockett, and at the very least, you're going to need a true number 4 receiver potentially. Quarterback, potentially finding Geno's long-term replacement. Linebacker position, you got Bobby Wagner and Jordan Brooks as free agents. And then the tight end spot, Noah Fant's a free agent. You'd like to upgrade the tight end position as well. So let's start out with target number 1. That is Dallas Turner. We've talked a lot about Dallas Turner as of late here on Seahawks Today. And I got to tell you, I really love what Dallas Turner brings to the table. Played his entire career with the Alabama Crimson Tide from 2021 to 2023. Consensus All-American, and it was named the SEC's Co-Defensive Player of the Year this past season. Mel Kiper Jr. has him as the number 1 outside linebacker in this year's draft, the number 10 overall player in the draft as well. And you talk about value. If a guy that's rated that high is still available for Seattle with that number 16 pick, then you're feeling really good. And you think about the track record when it comes to these edge rushers that Alabama has developed, most recently Will Anderson, then you got to be feeling pretty good about what Dallas Turner could potentially become coming off a season where he was on a loaded defense there with the Crimson Tide, still managed to have 10 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and 53 tackles. I think you're talking about an immediate impact player to the Seahawks defense if they can get him there at 16. And one of the ongoing discussions when it comes to this draft over the next couple of months, you hired a defensive head coach. Are you leaning towards defense with that first pick? If you are, then Dallas Turner makes a ton of sense. Should the Seahawks draft Dallas Turner? What'd you think? Y for yes, N for no, our pinned comment today. Get in the war room. Let us know what you think if Seattle should draft Turner or not with that pick. Let's talk offense now. A guy we've talked about on the program this week, Brock Bowers, the tight end. Bowers, the tight end from the University of Georgia. Just an incredible player. I think he's the best tight end prospect we've seen in years, maybe ever, in all honesty, coming out of just a guy that's prepared, who's ready to go play in the National Football League. 2-time national champion, 2-time first-team All-American with the Georgia Bulldogs, the number 7 player on Kiper's big board. We told you this week how Phil Yates is projecting the Seahawks get him at 16, that he falls their way. He did have an injury issue this past season, but he did come back from it. And despite the injury and all, he still managed to be the top tight end in the country, a first-team All-American with 714 yards, with 56 catches. He was just outstanding with 6 touchdowns this year. I honestly think you can't miss. And we've seen the best teams in the NFL have great tight ends. You add him to the equation here, this changes the Seahawks offense completely. Whether it's Geno under center or somebody else, they are going to find Brock a lot, and he is going to be a big difference maker for this Seattle Seahawks team potentially. Today's show is presented by Manscaped. Roses are red, violets are blue. Trim your balls, and your date will thank us too. What's up, fellas? Valentine's Day is knocking, and Manscaped is the remedy for what they love. Doctor ordered his prescription, the all-new Performance Package 5.0 Ultra, designed to elevate your grooming game and shine like the heartthrob you are. Join the 10 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with our exclusive offer. Go to manscaped.com to snag 20% off plus free shipping with code Seahawks. I got to tell you, you don't want to be using your normal razor for your face down there. Your balls are going to thank you later when you use these fantastic products that Manscaped is offering. Here's a couple things that the package includes. We're talking about the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra. You also are getting the Shed Travel Bag, the Boxers 2.0 in this package. You also get a little cologne involved as well. And for those of you that have a beard, I know I'm a clean-shave guy, but trust me, I understand. You got to keep that beard clean. Luckily, this package also includes the Beard Hedger Pro Kit as well. You won't want to miss out on that. It's going to make your face feel a lot better. Get 20% off and free shipping with code Seahawks at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com. Use code Seahawks because grooming upgrade awaits, ready to charm your Valentine's dates. The link is in the comments and description of today's video. Check out Manscaped today. You'll be glad you did. Let's go back to the defensive side of the ball. We find Jared Verse from Florida State. Jared Verse, a terrific talent. I think he's one of the safer picks in this year's draft. If you're trying to look for a sure thing of sorts, Jared Verse could potentially be that. Started his career. You talk about going from 0 to 100 real quick. Started all the way back at Albany for a couple of seasons. Moves on to Florida State and adapted to the ACC and Power 5 football pretty quick as he was a two-time first-team All-American there at Florida State. Mel's got him as the number one defensive end in this year's draft. He had 9 sacks last year on a loaded Florida State defense, might I add you. 41 tackles, 1 forced fumble as well. Jared Verse was great this past year. I think he could be a franchise player potentially to really just build your defense around as far as that goes. Another name to watch, Latu himself, the outside linebacker from UCLA, and folks in the Pacific Northwest are very familiar with him as he began his career with the Washington Huskies, then transferred within the Pac-12 conference to UCLA. He was a unanimous All-American in 2023, and Mel's pretty high on him as well as the number 2 outside linebacker in this year's draft, number 16 overall player. UCLA, that defense didn't have a lot to write home about, but yet he was a difference maker. He was still very, very good this past year, a game wrecker of sorts with that UCLA defense. Could be a guy to watch out for, somebody that's already familiar with Seattle as well. So let's ask you, who should the Seahawks draft in the first round? We're going over a number of names here. Now it's your turn to make the call. Beat John Schneider. Let us know who you think the Seahawks should pick with their first-round selection at number 16 overall, or if you think they should trade up and get somebody else, weigh in. Let us know what you think. Let's talk quarterback now. The most likely name, I think, for the Seahawks, if they stay at 16, is going to be J.J. McCarthy, the quarterback out of Michigan. Mel has him as the number 4 quarterback in the draft, number 23 overall player on his big board. McCarthy won a national championship with Michigan this past season, was first-team All-Big Ten, very accurate passer. 72% completion percentage, 22 touchdowns, nearly 3,000 yards this past season, only 4 interceptions. The question I have about J.J. McCarthy, though, is this, okay? I think it's a very fair criticism of some sorts, is, yes, he is a proven winner. He won a lot of football games and played at a high level. But can he carry a team? Because Michigan's run game was so stacked and so loaded this past season. J.J. McCarthy was never asked to do a lot. He was never asked to go out and win a game on his own, right? He didn't have to. Can he do that in the NFL? I don't know the answer to that question. Not saying he can't, but based on what he was asked to do in that Harbaugh system, we just don't know. So that's the hesitation for me. Picking him at 16 is just the great unknown of how well he can carry a team on his own as far as that goes. Another quarterback, we find Bo Nix out of the University of Oregon, number 6 on our draft targets list. And Bo Nix had a very good season with the Oregon Ducks this past year. First team All Pac-12 selection, was also named the Pac-12's Offensive Player of the Year. And we're looking at kind of all over the place. Some people think Bo Nix could go as high as top 10. Some have him as low as a third-round grade potentially. He is an older quarterback. I think back to his time at Auburn where he really struggled. It was a roller coaster for him facing those SEC defenses. He faced some lesser defenses, rather, when he moved over to the Pac-12 and played for Oregon, saw his numbers increase. He was the most accurate passer in the country this past year with a 77% completion percentage, over 4,500 yards, 45 touchdowns, and 3 picks. Bo Nix was great this past year. But what I worry is that he's still the same quarterback that he was at Auburn. That is my concern when it comes to Bo Nix. But the size is there. The ability looks like it's there. But is he going to fall back on his ways of what he was at Auburn when he faces the NFL competition? That's my concern. If you had to pick a quarterback between these two, which quarterback would you rather go with? J.J. McCarthy or Bo Nix? Type J for J.J. McCarthy. Type B for Bo Nix. Let me know which quarterback you rather have. Weigh in the comments section. Let's go back to defense now, and this is where we find Jer'Zhan Newton from the Illinois Fighting Illini. And you got to say, credit to Illinois for what they've been producing when it comes to talent in the NFL. Brett Bielema, he was on Bill Belichick's staff for a hot minute there with the New England Patriots, and he's done a really good job of developing some NFL talent. Seahawks fans know firsthand with Devin Witherspoon, who the Seahawks selected out of Illinois at number 5 overall. First team All-American, Big Ten's Defensive Player of the Year this past year. And Mel's got him as the number 1 defensive tackle on his big board. And we're starting to see his stock rise a bit. Really just dominated. And faced a lot of double teams on that Illinois team, yet still managed to have 52 tackles, 7.5 sacks, and a forced fumble as well. 6'2" and 295. Maybe could put on a little bit more, but nonetheless, the talent is there. Newton could be a very good player potentially on that front. Another defensive tackle. We go to the Big 12 Conference and find Byron Murphy out of the University of Texas. The eyes of Texas were certainly upon Byron Murphy in 2023 as he was named the Big 12's Defensive Lineman of the Year and was a first-team All-Big 12 selection. Kuiper has him as the number 3 defensive tackle on his big board. We've already seen several mock drafts projecting Seattle to take him there at their pick at number 16. And Byron Murphy, I mean, another situation. Took on a lot of double teams and still managed to have 5 sacks, 29 tackles this past year, 6'1", 308, just a woolly mammoth of a human being, and very good against the run and the pass as well. This is a guy that does a little bit of everything. Byron Murphy could be an intriguing pick. Now, let's go corner. The best corner in this year's draft. You may notice something about him. I won't say, but you can just look and you get the idea. I'll leave it at that. You need another visual? Yeah, you get the idea. Very rare breed at his position. But don't let that fool you, because Cooper DeJean is the best corner in this year's draft. Unanimous All-American, Big Ten Defensive Back of the Year, number 1 corner, number 13 overall player on Mel Kiper's big board. And there's already discussions about him potentially moving to safety, that it might be a better position for him. But whatever it is, whether you play him at corner or whether you play him at safety, either one, the Seahawks could certainly have a spot for him in their defense one way or another. 2 interceptions last year, 5 pass breakups. Cooper DeJean was very, very good and could be, I think, a natural fit for what Mike Macdoanld wants to do for the Seahawks defense. Got a couple more players to get to before we wrap up here, but I want to know, what is the biggest need in this year's draft for the Seattle Seahawks? We've talked about several needs for this team. What do they need to address? What's the top priority in this year's draft? Way in the comment section. Tell us what you think. Last player on this list, a name very familiar for Seattle fans, as we are talking about Washington offensive guard Troy Fautanu with this pick. And I got to tell you, very impressive to see what he was able to do this past season with Washington. First team selection, number 1 offensive guard in this year's draft, number 12 overall player on Mel Kiper's big board. And we're seeing his stock really starting to rise as well. People are starting to learn more who he is. And you look at the consistency. I mean, played nearly 1,000 snaps last year and still managed a PFF grade of 75 last year, and was recognized as the best lineman, period, in the Pac-12 conference last year. We saw how well that Washington offense was cooking with the O-line and the D-line, with what they were able to do, putting up points, and started at the line of scrimmage, and Troy was a big part of that. So, to recap, looking at our draft targets from Dallas Turner, Brock, Jared, Latu, J.J. McCarthy, Bo Nix, Jer'Zhan Newton, also Byron Murphy, Cooper DeJean, Troy as well. Those names there for our potential draft targets for Seattle at 10. If you made it to the end of today's show, we appreciate you guys, and we want you to spam Real One in the chat for making it to the very end and checking out today's show. We certainly appreciate it. We'll see you next time right here on Seahawks Today.